Palmer, getting to our spring practice observations, we've seen 2 practices. We've seen probably a little over 30 minutes of practice thus far. What would you say is the one thing you've noticed about this team, maybe more than anything?
So, I can't help but think about the wide receivers and that position group, the talent, the amount of talent and experienced talent that you've got. And maybe it's not experienced at Georgia. You've got 2 guys that are transfers in that room that are going to be counted on. But we were asked on the board yesterday and about the biggest difference between this spring and last. And of course, it's the presence of Jake Rowe. You weren't around last spring, so that one fell upon me. And I think it's obviously the quarterbacks and the question, the uncertainty there. It's not necessarily a question about the guys. It's more a question about who is the guy. The uncertainty about who is the guy. And I think that comes across in it puts a certain pressure on them during the sessions that we get to see with the wide receivers. But I think when you look at the wide receivers, that's one of the biggest differences to me because of, again, the talent that you have there. Dom Lovett. Can't say Dom Blaylock. Dom Lovett. Dominic Lovett. Ra Thomas, the freshman. I mean, Tyler Williams is somebody that is just physically outstanding. Yazid Haynes and Anthony Evans both looked the part. And then obviously that's in a room that brings back Lad McConkey, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Dylan Bell, all guys that contributed last year. There are just a lot of guys that I think Arian Smith. I mean, the fact that I went that deep into the wide receiver discussion without mentioning a guy that has constantly had buzz around him, says a lot about where that wide receiver room is. So I think that to me is one of the biggest differences and is probably one of the things that has been most impressive, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the weapons that are around those quarterbacks. We talked about the tight ends, obviously the receivers there as well. And an experienced running back room, you're not having to replace 2 guys in that running back room and see who's going to step up. You've got 2 guys back, you're replacing 1, but you've got 2 guys back that have played major roles, as opposed to just 1 last season with Kenny McIntosh. I don't think coming into 2022 you could have said that Kendall Milton or Dajon Edwards had played a major role. Kendall based on some injuries that had held him back, Dajon based on the depth chart that had held him back. You can very clearly say that going into 2023 that those 2 guys have played major roles, and you've got talented backs that you're excited about in Branson Robinson, Roderick Robinson, and Andrew Paul when he can get healthy. So the weapons, to me, it's the thing that has stood out is the weapons that are around the quarterbacks. Yes, there is uncertainty with who's going to be the guy at that position, but you've got so many talented skill players around them that whoever it is going to have a lot of help.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And, I look back to last season, a couple points on the receivers here. I look back to last season and, October was probably Georgia's least, late September through October is probably Georgia's least impressive stretch of the season, that Kent State, Missouri stretch. What was going on then? Well, first of all, Georgia was turning it over. Secondly, Lad McConkey was playing awful football. He was dropping everything thrown his way. He fumbled it a couple of times, and they were key fumbles. It wasn't until he picked it up that the offense really started to take off. And I think coming into this year, when you've got Ladd and when you've got Dominic Lovett, and if you've got a healthy Arian Smith, that is a lot of stress on a defense. That's even more stress than Darnell Washington put on a defense, because you're like, man, we saw number 84 absolutely light up Tennessee and absolutely light up TCU in some big games, and you know that he can get you. Well, you also know Dominic Lovett can get you. And by the way, we were watching some sort of weird 2-on-1, two defensive backs versus one receiver drill. Dominic Lovett lowered a shoulder and took everything Jonel Aguero had to give him. And it was just like a train wreck there.
One of the first reps, if I recall.
Yeah, it was very, very physical play, and by both players, it was impressive. So Dominic Lovett is a playmaker. I mean, we're talking about one of the leading receivers in the SEC last year with very sketchy quarterback play. Not only those guys, Arian Smith, you brought him up. I mean, you don't do what Arian Smith did in the playoff, which was basically just cook everybody that tried to cover him. If you're not a fantastic player, and for him, obviously, it's staying healthy. I agree with that 100%. And I also think, Palmer, I can't shake the idea that somebody that we're not really talking about, somebody we're not really expecting huge things from, is going to surprise us. And whether that's Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint or whether it's Dylan Bell.
McConkey.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, this coming year. I think that one of those guys are, because you expect it from Ladd, you expect it from Lovett. Heck, you may even expect it from Ra because you've seen him do it before. But I think one of those guys, and it's probably going to be Jacksaint or Dylan Bell. I think one of those dudes is going to make some plays for Georgia.
Well, and I think that's consistent with what has occurred over the last couple of years. This time in before that 2021 season, we weren't really talking about Ladd McConkey a ton. AD Mitchell had an impressive spring and, stood out, in the spring game. We weren't talking about Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint a ton, and nobody had, huge expectations for him in 2022. And he ended up as one of the top 5 pass catchers. So that idea is certainly consistent with what has played out and how things have shaken out over the last couple of years, is that typically during the spring, during summer workouts, during fall camp, somebody emerges out of nowhere and comes to be a big time player for the Bulldogs. So flipping things over, unless you got something else on offense.
Well, I do want to answer this question here real quick about CJ Smith. Running with the twos, based on what we've seen at practice, they do the routes on air. 3 receivers are out there. He's usually in that second group at flanker or Z receiver with, I believe, Dylan Bell, who's at split end, and Dominic Lovett, who has been running at the slot. So I've seen some good things out of him. I just don't really know. There are a lot of mouths to feed there, man. And I tell you what, if he emerges, he's going to have to earn it, because there are a lot of good football players in that room right now.
And look, he could very easily be the one that emerges. I mean, He could very easily be with that skill set and that speed and that size. That is, and I wrote about him after the playoffs. Talked to him. I believe I spoke to him at National Championship Media Day. But talking to him and what has he learned, and the biggest thing that he said is, it was learning how to take the speed that he has and translate that to football. It's not just track speed. You've got to figure out how you use that on a football field in a football setting. And nobody was better for him than that, learning that than Arian Smith. It took Arian some time, because early on in Arian's career, I mean, look at him. He was just a, run past these guys and it's almost gimmicky. I mean, calling a, go route isn't a gimmick, but it was a very select area that he could and was making an impact. And I feel like as Arian has gotten older, especially when he's been healthy, when for an extended period of time, we've seen a more developed route tree from Arian. I mean, I think about that the 4th and 6, I think it was, touchdown against Missouri in 2021. Yeah, that wasn't just put on the burners and go. That was finding an open space. Yeah. A nice corner route there. Obviously the play that people remember this year was just a go. And I think that with CJ, you've got somebody that has size, that has speed, that's still learning, young in his time at Georgia, is still learning how to use that. And also, he's competing with Arian Smith for those reps. I mean, if you're trying to find, hey, who's the fast guy that we want to put out here for this, for this specific role, it's going to be Arian Smith right now.
And probably,
and then you've got some guys that are young that are capable of doing it too.
Well, also probably competing with Ladd McConkey and Dominic Lovett, who are probably cross-training there with that slot position as well, especially Ladd. I mean, Ladd hasn't played a lot of slot in his career. He's played a lot of Z, which is what CJ Smith and Arian Smith are both trying to do right now. And, God, Georgia's recruiting way too many Smiths, man. We got to get some Smiths out of here. We got to get
Robinsons.
We've cut down on the Warrens. We got – I don't think there's – is there a Warren left now? We got rid of Warren Erickson.
Warren Brinson.
Yeah, Warren Brinson's still around. Warren Buffett's still around, eating his egg McMuffin every morning. But yeah, I mean, there's so many Smiths there, and Georgia's receiving room goes deep, man, because I really like all three of those guys. You brought up Tyler Williams. I don't know that I've seen a Georgia receiver. I think George Pickens is probably the closest thing I've seen that you look at and you're just like, holy crap, look at that guy just physically. That is an NFL looking wide receiver, and he's 18 years old. I don't know where he's going to be as far as his development or learning the playbook. That's a lot. That is a lot. But he's a good looking player. We can use this to kind of transition over to the defensive side of the ball, Palmer. But my number one takeaway is Georgia has.
Before we do that, here's your look at here's your look at Tyler Williams.
Oh yeah, I mean, dude. He can move his kneecap around without bending at the waist. I mean, he looks bigger in pads too. I mean, he looks like a 215-pound wide receiver, and he's light on his feet. One of the things I noticed in the fully padded practice we saw, which was yesterday. He caught like a dig route over the middle, and it was one of those where he kind of left his feet so he could catch it in kind of the soft part of his body, not against his shoulder pads. It wasn't necessarily – it was kind of a little bit behind him, and he kind of jumped and caught it, kind of cupped it on his back shoulder. And I always – one of the things I've noticed with receivers over the years, Van Jefferson is one that really stood out to me with this, is what happens when those feet hit the ground, right? And – it wasn't like feet hit the ground, then he had to decide to run. It's like he jumps up, he secures the football. When the feet come down, he's already kind of exploded upfield part of the way. And that's just how athletic he is. And kind of going in this vein, my main takeaway is Georgia's got a big football team. It is a very big football team. I look at the outside linebackers that, Chidera is just absolutely going in on. Both days we've been there, he's been on a warpath, just, all over the IMG guys, basically taunting them for being from IMG. And that's Samuel Mpemba and Gabriel Harris. But that's a big group. The offensive line group is massive. The inside linebacker group, there's some guys over there. I need to look at the roster. I was looking at some of my photos, and I'm like, who the heck is this guy? Who's number 5 with the inside linebackers?
Raylan Wilson.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought that's who that was, but so who's number 30?
30 is a walk-on.
Walk-on, yeah.
It's Terrell Foster. Also,
Terrell Foster
from
looks
IMG.
Awesome. Yeah, another IMG cat. Yeah, looks awesome. So yeah, I mean it's impressive that the team that Georgia has put together from a physical standpoint. It's almost like I don't know who you would want to get off the bus first. I mean, honestly, probably Jordan Hall. Jordan Hall is put together like I don't know if you remember have you ever seen the photos of Darnell Dockett from his high school days?
I have not.
Oh my God, one of the most intimidating forces you've ever seen. If Roos was on here right now, he would probably be squealing like a child. Darnell Dockett's high school days were incredible. This cat is put together like a running back, like a jumbo running back. He's not a fat guy. He's high hip dude. Are you
talking about Jordan Hall or Darnell Dockett?
Both of them.
Yeah.
Both of them. Yes. Yeah. Who are you talking about? Darnell Dockett or Jordan Hall? Yes, both. Freak show. And hearing some good things about him too. It's kind of started to trickle out in the last couple of days. I caught some flack on our board for saying I didn't think Jamal Jarrett was Jordan Davis big. He's not. Okay. I know a lot of you guys would love to look at your pictures and think that he's just as big. He's not. He's just not. He's closer to Nazir Stackhouse in size than he is Jordan Davis, and that's fine. He may be a little taller than Nazir, but in terms of how they're put together. But listen, I think Jamal Jarrett's going to be a fantastic player too. And the offensive line, now you listen, even from far away, we're never close to them. Big group of dudes. And I've really enjoyed kind of watching that group from afar because, you got a lot of different body types there. And Xavier Truss has moved some weight around. Oscar Delp has gotten bigger. Georgia's got a big football team, man, a really big football team.
Yeah, there's Jamal Jarrett for you. He's not.
I will say this: that 55 looks small on his chest.
It does. He's big. He's big, but he's not Jordan Davis big.
No, he's not. He fit inside of Jordan Davis like a Russian nesting doll.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it, and I would say this has been one of the biggest, biggest things that I've taken away is Chidera as a coach and his motivation skills, and I think that's very important with this outside linebacker group because you've got guys that are hurt this spring. You've got Marvin Jones that's not out there. You've got Jalen Walker that could be in that position group, could be an inside linebacker. Either way, not out there. You've got Darius Smith that wasn't out there yesterday when we were out there watching. Obviously, there's opportunity for these young guys. Chaz Chambliss is there. He's a leader. He's a veteran. He's going to be a part of this rotation. But there's an opportunity for some of these younger guys, whether it's a Darius, who's entering his second season, CJ Madden entering his second season. Roos has always referred to CJ Madden as a slash, in that Robert Beal role. Speaking of the man, here he is, Jake Roos, joining us now. Jake, we're talking about Georgia's outside linebackers, those early enrollees, and some of the younger guys that have an opportunity. And I was saying that you always have referred to CJ Madden as a slash, could be a hand in the dirt guy. He's actually listed on the roster as a defensive end. So he's somebody that has an opportunity to step up. And then obviously the three early enrollees, Gabe Harris, Sam Mpemba, and Damon Wilson.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that Madden, that makes a lot of sense to me for him to kind of be like a 5-tech guy, hand in the dirt type. Kind of
and there's the need with Robert Beal gone.
Right, sure.
And he's clearly bigger than everybody else in that group.
Yeah.
I mean, he definitely is.
Yeah. I'm not too shocked to hear that. I mean, he's probably playing at like 265, 270-ish?
Yeah.
I would think.
Physically looks a lot like Jonathan Ledbetter did kind of those early years. I mean, Led kind of ended up getting around 280 by the time he was a senior. But sophomore, junior year, you and I had those conversations with Kevin Scherer about how the kid needed to, shed that tapeworm and gain some weight. And he definitely did at some point. But CJ Madden is every bit as big as Jonathan Ledbetter was as a sophomore.
That's not a name you hear a lot anymore, right? And which is a shame, man. I had huge expectations for Jonathan Ledbetter. Not to say he was not a good player. He was. But I thought he was going to do a ton. I really did. But then you talk about those freshman guys coming in. Damon Wilson's the dude who kind of, I think, has the edge there. I think Mpemba is just going to take some time. He's going to have to focus on that position after splitting time throughout his career. And then I think, to me, Gabe Harris is a very intriguing guy. Those pictures I've seen of Gabe Harris make him look like he's kind of ready built, if I'm not mistaken.
He may be he may be of those freshmen the biggest one. I mean, I think Mpemba's kind of that. Mpemba's kind of that. Hey, if you're going to go do a Mr. Universe type deal, I think Mpemba's probably just naturally more just ripped up and all of that. But I think Gabe Harris carries the most mass, probably the longest. But yeah, I mean, in terms of watching Chidera coach those guys, Damon Wilson is getting a lot less fire than the others are.
Yes.
I mean, he's getting
and maybe
more
it's just because he didn't go to IMG.
Yeah, maybe Chidera's got a bug up him somewhere about IMG because, man, both practices we've been out there, he has just been all over those cats. But Kirby has too. The Kirby thing,
it was funny because as we were walking off the field, I was looking around and I saw somebody wearing an IMG polo, an IMG pullover. So they had somebody out there.
Well, Kirby's doing his thing too. And we heard something from him that we had heard from Javon Bullard, which Wes pointed out last week, was he was yelling out, talking about eating off the floor. He was talking, I think he was talking to CJ Allen or somebody. He goes, seriously, are you ready to eat off the floor? If you're ready to eat off the floor, you can play at Georgia. Which I can't even wrap my head around it. It doesn't sound too, it sounds like a good way to get a stomach bug. But
so Jake, we were discussing this before players came in last night, and a couple of folks did. Both the players mentioned eating off the floor. When Kirby says that, do we think he's talking about physically getting down and eating off the floor, or do we think it's a food fell on the floor, let's pick it up, let's eat it?
Desperate. He's talking about desperation. It's just, hey, listen, if a crumb falls, are you willing to eat it? Are you willing to take whatever you can get to help this football team? And, in the past, I haven't heard him talk about eat off the floor, but I have heard guys talk about, I'm looking for a crumb. I'm just waiting for one to fall. I'm working for it. I'm trying to get it there. I can't get out of my head.
These guys are so big, they're just eating.